Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better. I am Jeanne Gallagher, and I'm here with Denise Stegall, our longevity concierge.
Hello,
Hey,
hello.
Denise. I love saying
I'm back.
concierge. And we're all a little silly today because we're talking about happiness. We just finished talking about happiness and joy, and we're going to talk about happiness and choices, right? And choosing to be
Yes,
happy, maybe.
yes, things you can, yes. Um,
So tell us about it.
so so many of my clients come to me and the first thing, they're unhappy. They're frustrated with how they look. They're exhausted because of the way they feel. They feel weighed down, because they're overwhelmed and they feel like they have no sense of fulfillment, right?
Mhm.
Um, most of my, but midlife, I mean, all through life, but really midlife throws curveballs at us all the time. Um, the challenge that I put upon these women is that, or that these women have, is they don't actually realize that they have the power to break free from this cycle of unhappiness, no joy, and create their own life that's vibrant, purposeful, satisfying. Um, Again, joy and happiness, they go together, and it's really happiness, joy. Happiness is, kind of how you feel in the moment. Um, but think about it. It's about the choices that we make every day that actually can bring us a step closer to happiness, step closer to happiness, step closer to joy, right? We can feel happiness in the moment. I just ate a donut. Actually, didn't you just eat a donut? But here's an example. I ate a donut. I feel happy in the moment. I just got my sugar high, right? In the long term, I'm going
Not
to
so
have
happy because the sugar high
not
goes
so
away
happy. I'm going to
quickly.
have a sugar dip, right? And I'm going to feel tired and lethargic. And if my goal in life or whatever is to maintain a healthy weight, did that donut, if it's one donut, not a big deal. If it's a dozen donuts, how did that donut affect my ability to be happy and experience joy because I've maintained my healthy weight? Or for those women in midlife who want to lose weight, people will say, oh, it's just a donut, it's no big deal. They These decisions add up because it's a donut today and it's a cookie tomorrow. And, little things like that add up. It's something like an extra calorie a day. And because I talk about food so much, I always have a food reference. An extra calorie a day over the course of the year, right? Or over the course of 10 years is almost 10 pounds of weight gain.
Wow.
And I've done the number, and I know I've done the numbers in my head, or actually, my husband's done the numbers in his head. But think about that, like just one, So if we're having a donut, and that brings us over our calorie um, allotment that's good for our body, right? Each one of us is different. That's where we see, weight gain just kind of creep up,
It
especially as
creeps
we
up
get
over
older.
time, and then all of a sudden you look back and you go, holy cow, what just happened?
Yeah, what just happened started 10 years ago.
Right.
Right.
And it
So
comes down to choices.
it does.
There we
It
are.
comes down to it's really the byproduct of those choices,
Mhm.
right? Big or small, you know, short-term gratification, long-term happiness, joy. Right. So that
So
I think
what
is
what
really
kind of
important to think.
choices can really bring us contentment and the joy that we should be looking for?
I think this is different for everyone.
Mm.
So choices, again, if you want to maintain a healthy lifestyle, or if you want to start a healthy lifestyle, um, choices like having a piece of fruit over a bag of chips. It doesn't have to be these huge things. If you want to look huge thing, um, do you buy, you need a new car, okay? Say you need a new car. Do you buy the $150,000 car that looks really freaking cool? Or do you buy the $50,000 car, which is still pretty cool, but you can afford better, right? What's going to make you, when it comes to that choice, which choice do you make? They're both in the short term going to make you happy. Will one of them make you happier? That's the question to ask yourself. Will this decision make me happy? And I think it's something we can actually ask ourselves in anything. If it's a relationship, you know, I have a pretty good relationship with my husband, so I'm trying to pick on him and I can't. What? Oh,
That's not a bad problem to have.
That's not a bad problem to have. Well, I'm gonna okay. So say this. I am gonna pick on him because I'm allowed. There's one thing that Mark does, and I'm not gonna talk about it, but one thing that he does that drives me crazy. Now say it's 5 or 10% of his personality. 90% of his personality is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to choose to let this 10% that kind of annoy me and ignore the other 90 amazing percent?
Well, that's a great analogy, because we can all think of family and friends that there's something that they eat with their mouth open. I don't know, something that you would clarify as or as obnoxious or annoying. And but what's the rest of it look like? And that's something that people can put into perspective for themselves, because if you're choosing to focus on the negatives, that's a whole nother conversation. Never mind just making the choices part that we're talking about today. Where is your focus? If you're focusing on the negative here, what other parts of your life are you focusing on the negatives too? And those choices could be as simple as just go outside for a second. Go walk around the house, go walk around the block, go outside and for 10 minutes. We're not looking at, taking the afternoon off and throwing off everybody's schedule, but step outside. Put a coat on first if you have to. There's so many excuses that we can come up with when we're trying to make these choices towards happiness. It's easy not to do.
And to your point, if it's sunny out and you go out for 5-10 minutes, the sunlight is uplifting. All of a sudden it uplifts your mood. You just, and not just you like the way you feel like internally, but externally you smile. It's kind of hard to be like, oh, to the weather, blah, 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 when it's sunny and nice out. I'm sure looking at myself again, I'm going to regret making that face.
That's a good face for radio.
It's a great face for radio. All right. So again, it's, choices, the choices that you make can either bring you closer to happiness and joy, or it can take you in the opposite direction. So be aware of your choices. Along those lines, the second thing I think of is, we talk about this quite a bit, is when it comes to goals, right? We've talked about this many, many times. How many times does somebody say, okay, especially around the new year, and we had these conversations, right? I'm going to work out 5 days a week. Well, if you're a person who's never worked out 5 days a week, that's a lofty goal. It's kind of a dumb
worked out
goal.
1 day a week. 5 is hard.
Right. So the goal here should be, or could be, I'm gonna work out 1 day a week and get that, under your belt. And then when you do that, like, you can be happy. Like, you've achieved something, you've accomplished something, as opposed to thinking, oh, I didn't get a workout today. So, I've still got 5 days. I've still got 6 days. Well, I didn't do it again Tuesday. Well, it's Wednesday. I still have 5 days. But then if you miss one more day, then there's only 4 days left. You can work out those 4 days, but if you don't, or even if you do, you kind of go, oh, well, I didn't work out 5 days.
You're mentally behind.
And rather than feeling accomplished that you did 4 or 3, you're disappointed and frustrated with yourself. So goal setting in this concept of happiness is really, really important. We talk about the SMART goals and everything like that. Usually, we talk about it in business, but much more often. But this is something to really put into perspective when you're in a place where you're unhappy and you want to change the way you feel about yourself, about your situation, about life. Little steps get you closer. Little forward steps get you closer to a goal, to happiness, than any kind of negative step that's going to bring you backwards. I think I said that right.
I think you did too.
Okay.
It made sense to me.
Good. And then I think the last thing I would say about this is progress over perfection. You know, we really are an all or nothing society, especially in the United States.
That's a great point.
And it can only set you up for failure and disappointment. Failure and disappointment is unhappiness, and it's so far from the spectrum of joy. So progress, a little bit at a time, like I was just saying, one little step at a time.
And if you journal those little steps, you're going to be able to look back and realize what you did. Because if they're just, not should say just, if they are little steps, it's easy to forget they happened.
Absolutely. There's somebody that I follow, his name is Brian Johnson. He calls all of these little things that you these little positive things, he calls them plus ones. And it's kind of funny. When I first read it, I was like, okay, that seems interesting. But it's amazing when you add up during the day all the little positive things that initially you wouldn't have thought of, like you said, but just those little things, just little plus one. Add them up at the end of the day, add them up at the end of the week, and you will notice, wow, you actually are doing things in small increments that are actually bringing you closer to where you want to be.
Fantastic. Denise, thank you so much. Make good choices. Work towards
Make
happiness.
good choices and be happy. Don't worry. Be happy.
Hello, everyone. This is Jeanne Gallagher, Discover Rising Tides, and I want to just take a moment to talk about my friend, Denise Stegall. I am honored to call her as a friend, and I'm so grateful that she gives us her insight during our shows, each show, and talks about healthy living, eating real food. You hear Denise say, eat real food a lot. Well, she means it, and she knows what she's talking about. She is an amazing healthy living coach, curator at Living Healthy List. And if you ever have any questions about what is real food, why does it matter, how does that apply to me, how do I change, what do I need to do, how do I even create a healthy living shopping list, make sure that you call her. She is your healthy living coach, and you can find her at healthylivinglist.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better. My name is Jeanne Gallagher, and I am so excited to have my dear friend, Sara Champie, with me here today. Hey, Sara, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really glad and excited to be here with you.
Oh, this is wonderful. And so, Sara, before we get started, give us a little bit about your background and your bio, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. My name is Sara, and I live in Sebastopol, California. I'm the mother of two young kiddos, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And professionally, I'm a clinical social worker. I spent the last 15 years studying complex and developmental trauma. I've worked in the hospice setting for years. And then about 6 years ago, I went into private practice where I'm offering therapy and specifically supporting people who are navigating hereditary cancer risk, folks with genetic mutations.
That's heavy, but it's also must be enlightening too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really meaningful work. I started out in the social work field more as working with kids. I worked in probation and foster care and kind of holding that 24-hour crisis line. And then I wanted to do less behavioral work and more of that internal, like, what is the meaning of us being here work? Like, what makes life, what's the why, makes life worth all this suffering?
What is the hereditary cancer risk? Because honestly, before we talked, I had never heard of it.
So hereditary cancer risk is essentially the growing understanding in the medical community that there are a variety of cancers that we see passed down through family lines. And genetic testing has been advancing a lot in the last 25 years, especially. But we are identifying more and more over time that certain mutations of certain genes are correlated with higher rates of cancer. So I myself am diagnosed with a positive BRCA1 mutation. A lot of people are familiar with the BRCA mutations. There's BRCA1 and 2, and they are associated with dramatically higher rates of breast cancer, but also ovarian cancer and prostate cancer. And so we are brought to genetic testing usually because someone in our family has experienced cancer, or maybe more than one person. And then for me, it was my OBGYN asked, do you want to get tested? Would you like to know whether you carry that gene mutation or a gene mutation associated with increased cancer risk? It's a wonderful screening tool. It's very empowering. And it also means that you know that you're walking with a hereditary cancer risk.
So that's interesting because, personally, I didn't understand, a little bit of personal information here is that my husband was diagnosed with essential thrombosis, which is technically a blood cancer. And I didn't, and it's been a couple of years, and I honestly didn't really wrap my head around this genetic thing until last week, which is weird, other than it happened and here we are. But it was that, how did this happen kind of a conversation. But somebody explained, and a doctor friend of mine explained in super simple kindergarten terms that there was this gene out there and it turned on. I'm like, oh, I get it. So it just, a light bulb came on, and I think it's the JAK2 gene, and I might have the name wrong, but the gist is, there it is. And with that, he could have been screened beforehand to understand that could happen, that it's there. And that would have shown that it might have been there. And I didn't understand that whole process. And it's funny how that conversation with my doctor friend happened the week before we're having this conversation. It's probably, the stars aligned, and here we are.
So did your husband get genetic testing through his
No. Well, no, but he had the testing after he was diagnosed. They actually did the testing then to see if he had that gene for diagnosis purposes.
That's right. There's kind of two ways that people get genetic testing. And one is, we look at the family tree and we say, oh, your aunt, your grandpa, one of these specific cancers that we know can be passed down genetically or through the family lineage. But the other way that people are accessing testing often is because they have been diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And we want to know
on the other side.
Yes, because then now we can use that information for your children, for, other people in the family system that might want to up their prevention measures, right? Scanning, monitoring, lifestyle. There's so much we can do when we have this information. I'm a strong advocate for genetic testing and for knowledge reconnecting us to our agency. And I also know can be very overwhelming because then you have this information.
Right. So part of me says, I don't want to know.
Yes.
because that's heavy, and there is a lot of responsibility and knowledge. And as you're talking to people through this process, how important is it to have somebody that's knowledgeable in this area to handle the mind trips that we're all going to take on ourselves by finding out this information. Oh, I have this gene, I'm going to die, when you don't have no symptoms and nothing's happening, right? So what does that really look like for you, and talking with your client base through this?
Well, I think that you alluded to probably one of the most important qualities of a provider that I hope all patients are looking for, which is that we all have our own relationship to health information. We all have our own relationship to uncertainty. And no one outside of us can define the next, the best action for our health journey. So the way that you alluded to that was, you said, part of me thinks I don't even want to know.
Mhm.
So this sort of respectful, empowering approach with patient care starts even like, do you want to get your genetic testing done?
Mhm.
Good portion of us might say no, right?
Mm.
I don't want to know. I just want to like be in the present moment, live my life. We are all walking with a level of uncertainty at all the times, right? There's that classic
Mhm.
joke, like you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? Like, and so for those people that sure they have a lot of cancer in their family, but they are not ready, they do not see the benefit of really engaging with that on a genetic testing level, I would still support that person to have that choice, have their agency, work with that information in their own way. So I just wanted to, because well, on the one hand, I am an advocate of genetic testing. On the other hand, I'm an even stronger advocate for our individual agency and our self-determination as we relate to our health and to these like giant unknown.
Yeah. I would think that that conversation around I don't want to know is really almost more important to have with somebody supportive, because there can be the information that can be gleaned from the test could help somebody proactively prevent something from happening, and helping somebody reframe these thoughts of I don't want to know versus, oh, how can I better position myself and my own health, and come at and learn how to reframe that thought process to come into it to be a better advocate for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I really resonate with everything that you're saying. And I've left doctors who have sat me in their office and said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. And
Mm.
this is how you should work with we'll go in this direction." And I've actually ended relationships with providers because I felt that they were defining what my tolerance or my decision making, there was a morality almost in the tone that they were using with me. So I think that this respectful stance needs to start from the gateway, and specifically as a therapist, right? In my practice right now, I'm working as a therapist and sitting with people individually who are navigating either a cancer diagnosis or, their hereditary cancer risk.
Mhm.
And we're really looking at the emotional impact of that. Your doctor gives you this information and they are going to say, okay, so you have this genetic mutation, and and they're going to have like a measured kind of serious tone with you, and they're going to say, but don't worry, you don't have cancer, nothing is happening right now, but these are all your options, and they're going to talk about all the ways, like you're saying, you can proactively engage. You can have lifestyle choices. You can, for some of us, have prophylactic surgeries, like some people with the BRCA1 and 2 mutation might choose to have a preventative mastectomy, double mastectomy, to reduce their cancer risks. If you're of childbearing age, you can undergo IVF, and then you can test each of the embryos and
Mhm.
choose to only transfer the ones that are free of this genetic mutation, thereby ensuring that
Oh,
your
wow.
children don't carry this risk.
Mhm.
There's a lot of ways you can engage with this, but your doctor is going to present them all to you, and then they're going to say, we'll see you in a few months. You let us know what you decide. And so I really see my work with these patients, with these clients, as filling that gap, right?
Mhm.
We're
Mhm.
sitting in my office exploring how this information landed in their body, what
Mm.
memories or associations are influencing their decisions, right? Like almost everyone that is navigating hereditary, I mean, it's in the name, hereditary cancer risk, is because someone who has gone through cancer. So what was their story like? What was their outcome? How much suffering was there? What was their perspective on that?
Mm.
And getting the chance to tell those stories so that we can honor the
Mhm.
emotions, right? Honor what happened if we lost that person. It's doing a lot of grief work. but also to differentiate ourselves, right? That's not our
Yeah.
story. That's
Wow.
not happening right now.
Because our health is so affected by our thoughts, and our thoughts are so affected by our health. But I think that and you hear so many stories about people that have fought diseases and how important their mental state was through that process.
Exactly.
Really an integral part of their healing.
Exactly.
So if you're thinking about that for somebody that is not sick, that is totally well, they're how they are considering this new diagnosis, or the thought of having, not diagnosis, but the thought of having the genetic testing. I guess it could be, right?
In
But
some ways it is a diagnosis, and I've been
yeah.
playing with that word myself, Jeanne. It's like we are being diagnosed with a genetic mutation.
Okay.
In my case, has a 68, I think, to 80% chance of a triple negative chemo-resistant breast cancer by the time I'm 60. So the odds are high,
Wow.
like
Yeah.
for some of us. And it is a diagnosis in that we are then a part of a community which can support us, right? Which we can turn to for resource and camaraderie and strength. And it changes the course of our life, right? Now we're actually at a threshold where we are having scans every 6 months, where we have an oncologist, some of us, it might be in the pre-vivor or the survivor department, but we're in the oncology department, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm just really with you in like, we don't have cancer. Is this a diagnosis or not? I'm playing with that and playing with our relationship to that.
And how well equipped you are to have these conversations with people, because you've had to walk yourself through this process as well.
That's right. Yeah, I had my genetic testing when I was 30 years old, so 9 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I've been in a scanning process since then, and just navigating these different moments of intensity around what it's like to have a hereditary cancer risk and a genetic mutation.
I don't necessarily want to delve too much into the healthcare part. However, I think I'm going to step into the pool a little bit, or the quality of healthcare. But what comes to mind when we're talking about female cancers is trying to put my head around the right words. The lack of knowledge of how our bodies work, number one. The lack of communication between the healthcare provider and the patient. And then just even thinking about mammograms and how awful they are. There's nothing pleasant about a mammogram, and how people might avoid it. And then how sometimes ineffective that process can be. And maybe there's an ultrasound that should be happening every year. But if you didn't know that you were predisposed, I have dense breasts, so I have to have an ultrasound. But if I didn't, then that early detection piece is so important. But if you have the tools to pay attention, so that people are looking more, I don't know, looking more closely, or you're doing the correct tests in order to catch something early, how important that is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that this also goes back to your comment you made previously about the mentality, or the relationship to the information that we bring. Because as much as I 100% agree with you about the importance of early detection, and even though mammograms and these scans, and I have an MRI once a year on my breasts, and it's a whole ordeal. And no, I don't always constantly feel held, right, in my entire being by this medical system. I'm definitely been through the experience of feeling on my own, and that once a year or every 6 months I get a little like touch in, like, how's it going for you? I think that this piece about what is the mentality that we're bringing to the diagnosis or to the genetic testing information? So many people, and this is where the piece that I think is so interesting as a person who studied complex trauma and developmental trauma for the last 15 years. So many people could come to this point of this information and get this genetic testing, and they just flip their lid. That's a Dan Siegel term. It's like when your brain, you just like lose all your executive functioning. It's not possible to do reasoning because you're in fight or flight. The brainstem is totally hijacked. We are in panic. And it's usually a very understandable panic because this is mortality. Like for me, my mom died when I was 10, right? So for so many of us, it's like I lived through the death of somebody, my grandma, my uncle, my, or the horrible, experience of navigating cancer, even if they survived. And that memory is the most activated piece of receiving this information. And then we are in that context with the lid flipped and the brainstem activated, and we're in fight or flight, and we're so scared. And, that is the moment where we're also asked to make like these really big decisions about how we want to move forward, and they're not, hopefully your medical team is not going to be like, you have to decide today. I think that would be crazy. But regardless, that is the kind of backdrop that we're going into these scans with and going into this. And so that corner between panic, overwhelm, victimized, loss of control, and underlying it all, of course, grief, right? And turning that corner to a wide window of tolerance, ability to root into the present moment that we, for so many of us are not actively experiencing cancer in our body, that we have preventative measures that we're like, and then that we have preventative measures that we're like going to listen to our like subtle preferences about which is right for us, right? Like, okay, like I think a double mastectomy sounds really intense at first, but wow, going down to that 0.2% risk from 80% sounds really good. Okay, now let me start to like feel my way through, right? It's such a process of trying to listen to our inner voices, to our agency, right? To not what our partner wants us to do, not what our family wishes we would do, not what financially would be the easiest, right? But like really what is that quiet, subtle inner voice for me? What would be the kindest thing that would help me to live my fullest, most open-hearted, available life with this information?
And so to be able to get to that point of being able to sit quietly with yourself when going from your head ripped off to getting into a point where you're sitting quietly with yourself, that's a process. And that it would make sense that somebody finds somebody like you either before the test is taken or right after, so that they're not sitting by themselves with all of these thoughts for an extended length of time.
That's my dream, Jeanne. To be honest, like when I was thinking about, and my caseload was starting to fill up with people that had hereditary cancer risk as a part of their experience or were actively in cancer treatment, and then found out they carried a gene. This is the piece that you're hitting on that like has come up for me over and over again. What if when they handed me the test results, they handed me a group where I could be with
resources?
Yes, I could be with other people who were also just receiving this information, and we could support each other. And so to meet that dream, this is part of the work I'm doing right now, is I'm offering groups for people in the first 30 to 60 days after they get their genetic results. And we meet together for an hour and a half every week. It's a small group. I'm not having more than 8 people in each group because I really want this intimate connection. And then we walk for 12 weeks together, right? Your next visit's going to be maybe 3 months or 6 months down the road, right? So we're going to walk together. We are walking together for these, these 12 weeks and we're looking at, okay, how does this diagnosis, first of all, how am I handling this uncertainty?
Mhm.
What is my relationship to risk?
Mhm.
And then we move to like, how is this affecting my other relationships, my marriage, my family, my relationship
Mm.
with my kids? How's it affecting my relationship with my body?
Mhm.
What's it like
Mhm.
to live in a body with this? Some people talk about a ticking time bomb. Some people talk about, like I really want to, I'm so scared about all these reconstruction options, but if I go with a flat closure, will I still feel like a woman? Right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
so many, but like relationship to our body pieces. We walk through the stories of the people that we've lost and honored them so that we could also differentiate from them. This
Mhm.
is not what's happening to us right now. And it's just this beautiful community space that I longed for 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And I'm really hoping that can support people that are actively navigating their genetic mutation the transition into knowing you have a genetic mutation um, right now in their lives. Yeah.
I love this community conversation because in my mind's eye, I can understand that when somebody's given this diagnosis, they feel alone.
Mm,
And even if there's a significant other with them, there's this aloneness that happens. Why did it happen to me? Now I'm all by myself. How can I be an advocate? Everything is so overwhelming. But when you add the word community to this conversation, it softens the load.
mhm.
And you realize that you are not the only person that's dealing with this. Other people are dealing with it too. And how can you help them? But how can they help you in that setting?
Absolutely. And in the 10 years that I have been navigating this, I was offered 1 hour breast cancer cafe that had a
That sounds
social.
weird.
It was just like this is our homage to an emotional support around this. And here's some
A
resources.
breast cancer cafe.
Yeah, it was interesting. But the other things that I see a lot is like I'm a part of these Facebook groups. There's 10,000, 15,000 people in some of these groups that I'm in, and
Mm,
posts are just heart-wrenching. It's like, just got my diagnosis. Can anyone offer any advice? Like we long for each other, right?
mhm,
The other thing that has happened over the last 10 years is I have been connected via text message. People are like, oh, you have BRCA1, my other friend just got diagnosis. Can I give her your number? So we're like building these spider webs of connection and we're on the phone. Oh, how are you? What did you decide? And where you at with that? And,
mhm,
oh, like, what did you decide about your children? And, like really big conversations that we can't have in isolation. We need
mhm,
to like say, well, what made you think about it that way? And, how are my factors different? And compare and like sometimes hearing other people's stories helps us to realize the uniqueness of our own as well.
mhm. It puts things into perspective. Because
Yeah.
in our head, nothing is in perspective, no matter what it is, whether it's our health or anything else. Everything becomes way bigger or just spider webs into this, maybe a situation that might not be accurate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I have like the saddest stories are, I have contact with people who have made choices that they felt were rushed, right? And
Mm.
they wish that they had more information when they had decided to,
Hmm.
you know, do whatever path that they chose. And I think if there was like an underlying goal or an underlying yearning that my heart has for this work, it's that we are creating a space to look at what are the what is a holistic connection with ourselves. And what I mean by that is so many of us were raised in a household where we had to disconnect from some part of ourselves in
Mm.
order to survive. This is a developmental trauma piece, right? This is where our hereditary our genetic mutation becomes a portal to really do our inner work about our therapeutic work. It's like if we were raised in a household where big emotions were shamed, where asking for too much was, a reason for rejection, where maybe it was even just unsafe. Maybe we were raised in an abusive household, right?
Mhm.
In those contexts, we had to disconnect from parts of ourselves. And if we go into some of these huge life-changing decisions without our whole self on board
Mhm.
and involved, right? That's the context where I think some of these patients are then looking back and saying, oh, I wish I would have, taken a little more time. I wish I would have learned more about the risks of
Mhm.
implants, or I wish I would have learned more about IVF. I didn't do IVF, or maybe we could have taken a loan out for that. Or, like that's like the place where I hope that, if we can move into this threshold as an opportunity to do this deep inner work, to claim all parts of ourselves, and then, take the time that we need to come to a decision that we feel that deep clarity, that deep sense of integrity with. Right. And
Mhm.
so we look back on our life, and no matter what the decision was, right? Because still nobody can tell you what it should be. But no matter what it was, you look back and you think, everyone told me I wouldn't XYZ, but I did anyways. And it was the right choice for me.
Mhm.
That's kind of like my big picture dream for supporting this community.
When you're living in the what if land
Mm.
there, and not having the time or the resources to make an educated decision. Educated, I use the term loosely, but educated decision, or feel like you're being an advocate for yourself and you're rushed into a decision, then there is that back look of, well, what if I did this, and what if I, and when you were talking about that, what really came to me was, there are times where, if you had all of the information, you might have made the same choice that you did. But you made the choice based upon all of the information, and that choice was right for you. It didn't change the end result, but it changes your relationship to the end result.
Mm. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Because what you're highlighting is that we are always in relationship to the end result, and
Hmm.
I think that even in these situations where patients end up looking back and saying, wow, if I knew then what I know now, XYZ, that's still an opportunity, right? For this
Hmm.
deeply loving relationship with ourselves and our
Hmm.
learning process and the context in which we survived an incredible moment, right? And
Hmm.
did the best we could with what we had at the time,
Hmm.
and making that space again, that even the parts of us that, if we look back, felt like a mistake, or felt like maybe we weren't seeing the whole picture when we did that, if we can make room for that part of us to sit at the table, the internal
Right.
table, right? And be here and say, I can see how and why that was. And the person you were at that time, you know, that they're welcome here, right? This is kind
Hmm.
of the dynamic of cultivating wholeness with ourselves as we navigate, you know, choices that nobody has the crystal ball about.
Hmm. Yeah.
Nobody has the
Yeah.
crystal ball. Yeah.
Hmm. And then you're also able to make some more appropriate choices to not only yourself and your body, but your environment, and taking a look at what are you doing right now, and how does that serve you, and how this might change your perception of either your activities or your lifestyle. And it could be that wake up moment of, I want to take better care of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really beautiful relationship to this information, right? When we can say, wow, this is scary. And wow, my
Mhm.
life really matters to me. And wow, you know, no matter what, we are going to be navigating a bajillion levels of variables that we have no control over, right? Our genetic
Mhm.
risk is just one piece of the puzzle. Environmental risks, like, and toxins and exposures, and just Oh my gosh, there is so much going on in the world of cancer and navigating our health and well-being in such an inflammatory, part of human history. Um, so it's not at all to like like to punish ourselves that we could or should or need to do more or do better, or if we get sick somehow we're responsible for that. Like, absolutely not. But it is about what you're speaking to, like um having a loving relationship, an aware relationship, a protective, self-caring relationship that's like, okay, if I have this information, what could I put in place? What could I do to like
Mhm.
give myself this best foot forward, this yeah, this connection to my vitality and to my well-being that I want to
Mm.
protect and promote.
Yeah. You had said, honestly, I don't know whether you said it before we got on or you said it while we were on, but it's really impactful. And so I want to make sure I bring it up. And you were talking about owning your own relationship with risk.
Yeah,
And that's an, I wouldn't have thought that ownership of risk would be something so important to talk about it, but it really is.
it
This is
really
yours. And
Mhm.
yes, but that's
Absolutely.
also a hard place to get to for
It's a
many.
hard place to get to, and it's kind of like one of the core tenets or values of working with our window of tolerance, of coming into a
Mhm,
respectful relationship with our histories of trauma.
mhm,
Um, some of us are going to have nervous systems that are just primed for a conflict, right? Like we thrive in emergency situations, like put us into, a situation with a lot of crazy variables and risk, and we're going to feel focused and alive and clear, and it's going to, we're going to thrive. Others of us need a lot of routine and a lot of protection and a lot of consistency, right? And there is no one way is not better than the other.
mhm,
That's the long and the short of it, right? And so coming into a respectful relationship with our own sensitivities, with our own window of tolerance as it is, it's kind of I always think it's like one of those things where it's oh, there's a word for it where it's not an oxymoron, but it's by respecting our current window of tolerance that we
mhm.
then have the ability to begin to grow it. Does that make sense? Like it's
Oh,
kind of
definitely.
two things at the
Well, you
same
have
time.
to realize where you're at
Yes,
in order to allow change to happen.
that's right.
And figuring, and like you said, not everybody's going to react in the same way. However, the catalyst can be the same, but people's reaction is so very different based upon all of these underlying pieces that you've talked about.
Absolutely.
And but having somebody with experience, personal experience with the situation, but also professional experience with the situation to walk through can be, it elicits a piece that's really almost empowering, that
Yeah, I
makes
mean,
you mentally stronger to handle the situation.
I think it's an opportunity for that, Jean. I think that
Mhm,
like any great crisis or struggle in our lives, these are gateways. These are, doors that are opening to offer us like a chance to wrestle and struggle with and explore who we are right now and
mhm.
what our relationship to, again, that quiet inner voice is, that inner voice, or maybe for some of us it could be really loud right away, but
Yes, I mean, quiet inner voice. I don't know who you're talking to, Sarah.
I know I was for some of us it's very clear, but
Yeah,
for others
right.
of us it's not. For others of us, we've spent our whole lives adapting and conforming and making peace and avoiding conflict and being a caretaker, and so in that situation that person is going to have a really hard time telling, well, what's the voice that would be best for my children or best for my
Mm,
partner or best for my work relationships or cause the least stink, and
mhm,
then
mhm,
if I can wipe the slate clean Like, what would I want
Mm,
myself, right? And so these are just really rich conversations that I get to have with clients about what risk even means to them, and in the context in which they're receiving this information and how important that is.
mm. That's really beautiful. So what would you think, what would be an indicator if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, I don't know, how do I know if I want to know?
Like around getting their genetic testing?
Getting their genetic testing, or yeah, around that, but also, yeah, I guess mostly around that, because if you've received it and realizing that, oh wait, you don't have to do this by yourself.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my call out to this community is, if you have a family history of cancer and your providers have been talking with you, someday you might want to get tested. This is an opportunity to begin working that muscle of, okay, am I ready? Am I at a place in my life where I want to take on the outcome of this test result? And if not, why not? Because if it's a big no, I want to get curious about, I'm not going to call it avoidance, but I want to get curious about the part of you that says not right now.
Mhm.
Like, what is that about? Is there so many fires going on in your life that you can't add another one? Well, then that's probably what deserves your attention at this moment. You know what I'm saying? So that's number one. And then number two, like if you're ready to get your genetic testing done, the people that you can ask are, if you're a uterus carrying body, you can ask your OBGYN. Men can ask their primary care as well. I mean, anyone can ask their primary care. I just got my test results, and I think a lot of people through their OBGYN care. And there's also genetic testing that you can pay for privately online. There's so many places. Your health systems likely have genetic counselors, and your genetic counselor is going to be such a resource to you. These people have spent their career understanding the nuance of what these test results mean and don't mean. And they are hooked up with your health system as a facilitator and an educator. So they will be somebody that you can have contact with. And I think where my work pairs with them is they're going to give you the download of the genetic mutation, what it means. They're going to throw a bunch of stats and a bunch of paperwork at you. And then it's your job to leave that office and go make sense of it for yourself, emotionally, relationally.
But not by yourself, because
But
there's
not by yourself, right? And that's where I think that if you're in California, anyways, I'm only licensed in California, but I would be honored to talk with you and be a support person along your way. And these groups are running for folks that just got their genetic information. You can join us in one of these groups.
And so how do people do that? How do they get in touch with you or reach out to the groups?
Thank you. Yeah. So my website is www.sarachampie.lcsw.com. And the groups are called Face the Risk Together. And we have a new Instagram that I'm just getting started with, Face the Risk Together. And there is going to be a website under facetherisktogether.com, but it's under construction right now. So that's where I'm at.
Sara, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and having this conversation, because it's so important. And I just really respect you so much. And I love the work that you're doing to help in creating the community and providing a resource for this.
Thank you, Jeanne. It's been so great to get a chance to talk it over with you and share it and be a part of your community.
Thank you so much for listening today. Today's show is sponsored by Seaside Solutions, my financial services company. As a business owner, it's easy to be pulled in many different directions, and often taking care of yourself plummets to the bottom of the list. For me, I find myself outside to reground. My time outdoors helps me manage my day more effectively and be more present for my clients. Through this, Discover Rising Tides was born. At Seaside Solutions, we truly believe that education is the foundation of financial wellness. Our primary focus is to provide guidance that is designed to help you achieve your long-term financial goals and visions. Working with a plan allows space for doing more things that you love, like being outside to make the inside better. If I can help you create or realign your plan, or if you would like to be added to my weekly newsletter, please let me know. This week's topic was 5 ways to set more achievable goals. Your referral means the big, beautiful world to me. And if I can help, please let me know. And thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.